Welcome back. Spooky season is upon us, and to celebrate we'll be looking at 5 of the creepiest Arkham Villain stories in the series. A few of these you might know, but hopefully a couple are new, and as with all lore videos, a huge amount of stuff I will talk about won't have direct visual representation, so I'll put some interesting background footage or relevant stuff to watch there. And in no particular order of creepiness, let's start out with number 1.
Make her better. Pig make all of us better.
Laszlo Valentine grew up chasing perfection. His parents drilled into him that he wasn't good enough, and that wound never really healed. As an adult, Laszlo became a brilliant scientist, the kind of mind that would genuinely make the world a better place had his sanity not taken a nosedive first. But after suffering a schizophrenic breakdown, his idea of quote-unquote helping humanity turned into something far more disturbing. He became convinced that individuality itself was a disease, that to make people quote-unquote perfect, he needed to strip away everything that made them unique, and that's where Professor Pig was born. Under the pig persona, Laszlo transformed himself into the deranged ringmaster of the Circus of Strange, a travelling horror show where he and his so-called freaks lured unsuspecting victims under the guise of entertainment. Once inside, the real performance began, where Pig used a mix of chemical mutilation, surgery and psychological torture to create what he called Dollartrons, his perfected humans. These poor souls were left as emotionless husks, their faces hidden behind doll masks fused to their flesh, their identities erased completely, and any trace of humanity gone. Those who didn't meet his standards of perfection didn't even live to tell the tale anyway, and Pig made examples of them, leaving their bodies posed in grotesque shows of violence, each accompanied by cryptic notes about their flaws. At one point during his twisted reign, Pig built something he called his Mother of Nails, a crude Iron Maiden decorated with a female mannequin head, his warped tribute to the mother who'd broken him in the first place. And if that wasn't enough nightmare fuel, it gets even worse. When a wealthy man named O'Neill tried to ransom back his own son after Pig had turned the boy into a Dollartron, Pig refused. In his mind, the boy had already been made perfect, and so the father had to be perfected too, with Pig sending the Dollartrons, O'Neill's son included, to capture the man and prepare him for the perfection process. In the Arkham Knight audio files, we get a rare, almost human glimpse into Professor Pig, and it's really quite weird. Through his recordings, it's revealed that Laszlo Valentine actually had a son, and that every single one of these audio logs was left behind for him. Even through his fractured mind, Pig speaks to his child with genuine affection, calling him perfect. It's the one thing in his entire philosophy that isn't twisted. He genuinely did love his son. But then, like everything in Pig's world, the love got tangled up in horror, and he claims that his own mother would have killed both him and his son, and that he had to stop her before that could happen. He saw himself as saving the one pure thing in his life, even as he slid further into madness. And what's even more unsettling is how he speaks about the boy's mother. Pig can't remember her name or even how they met, but he remembers how she made him feel. He calls her perfect too, his idea of beauty, his muse. But then his tone shifts and we just hear how broken that love story became. He says that the quote-unquote nails had done their work, and he describes how he tried for months to fix her, to make her beautiful again, until finally he implies that he had to mercy kill her. Whether any of this is true or not is another question entirely. Pig's mind is so far gone that it's impossible to deduce whether or not he's actually ever telling the truth, but even if his recollections are fractured, they tell us one thing very clearly. While Pig is an irredeemable person, he's a man who once loved, and that love became just another part of his madness, and with that, let's move on to number 2.
Monster, you evil, evil, evil monster!
He's not going anywhere.
We actually find a huge amount about Zsasz during Arkham City. We discover that one summer night, Victor Zsasz sat at a poker table in the Iceberg Lounge, which was a place where the only man who ever really won was obviously Oswald Cobblepot, the owner. Somehow though, Zsasz had been on a streak, beating out hustlers, killers, murderers, drug dealers, even the scrippers. Jesus walks with it, sorry. Anyway, he'd worked his way up to the owner's table, and he went all in on 4 6s, thinking he'd struck gold, but this was the Iceberg Lounge, and Penguin, I know, big shock, didn't play fair. Cobblepot laid down a straight flush, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and laughed as Zsasz lost everything. His fortune, his dignity, even his hair, all gone in the blink of an eye. I do want to say, I don't know if Victor actually lost his hair here in this game of poker. In fact, I'm almost confident he didn't. But anyway, he was thrown out onto Gotham's frozen streets and wandered aimlessly, broke and broken, until he found himself standing on Sprang Bridge, staring into the water below. He was ready to send himself back to the lobby until a homeless man pulled a knife on him and demanded cash. That one act flipped something inside Victor. He disarmed the man, turned the blade on him and slit his throat, and in that moment Zsasz didn't feel fear. He, by his own account, felt pure euphoria. He carved his first tally mark into his skin and marked the beginning of a ritual that would define him forever. From that point on, Zsasz became obsessed with murder. He believed he was doing people a favour and liberating them from their meaningless, empty lives. The way he saw it, he wasn't a killer, he was a saviour, and his victims ranged from a young artist he forced to draw scenes of chaos before stabbing him in the back, to a GCPD officer he strung up and slaughtered like an offering. Even Gotham's underworld didn't know quite what to do with him. Inside Arkham Asylum, through audio tapes, we can hear Dr. Sarah Cassidy try to reach the man Victor once was, but Zsasz only used his therapy sessions to study her, where she lived, her habits, everything. When she discovered he'd already chosen a place on his skin to mark for her, she panicked and had him transferred, but like an incel in a YouTube comment section, Zsasz doesn't take rejection well, and he broke out, hunted her down and kidnapped her from her apartment, dragging her to the old country hospital to free... Okay, when I say free, I mean, kill her, in the most twisted way possible. Batman stopped him before he could make that mark, saving her life and throwing Zsasz right back into Arkham's hands. He didn't stay there long though, and during Joker's takeover in the event of Batman Arkham Asylum, Zsasz escaped, killed multiple guards, and took another hostage, a man named Mike. His demand was simple: if he saw anything that even looked remotely like a bat, the guard would die. Batman used the IGN guide and practiced his drop attacks and left Zsasz unconscious on the floor. He escaped again, leaving a trail of corpses propped around a card table, mocking the very game that had ruined his life years before in a show of extreme self-awareness. Later, Joker recruited Zsasz to interrogate Dr. Penelope Young for the Titan formula. He held her at knife point, savouring every second of her terror, until Batman intervened, knocked him out with a batarang, and after that, Zsasz kind of just vanished. Before Arkham City though, he did end up auditioning for Joker to operate on the Abramovici twins and separate them, and Zsasz casually mentioned that everything he worked on tended to die. Joker laughed and sent him packing, which I actually think is quite funny. Anyway, when Arkham City was founded, Hugo Strange quietly released Zsasz so Tiger could recapture him and make the new prison look effective. But Zsasz slipped away, hacked into the city's phone lines, and turned the prison into his next hunting ground. He began calling payphones across Arkham City, challenging anyone who answered. If they failed to keep up with his deadly game, he'd find them and liberate them. It didn't take long before people started calling him the Payphone Killer, which is an unbelievably cool name. Eventually, Batman tracked the calls and followed the signs while listening to Zsasz waffle, and eventually found him hiding in the industrial district. Batman smashed through the glass and put him down, locking him in his own cage. Zsasz woke up begging for more marks, pleading that cutting was the only thing that made him feel alive, but when Arkham City fell, Zsasz's fate was kind of left uncertain. But by the time of Arkham Knight, he was out again, free thanks to the city's legal fallout from Protocol 10. CCTV footage even shows him near the clock tower during Oracle's kidnapping, still pale, still scarred, and still itching to make another mark. That almost rhymed. Anyway, Batman later found 3 more of his victims posed on Founders Island, proof that Zsasz was still at work and still liberating Gotham one body at a time. His story, much like a lot of people in this franchise, comes to an end in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, more specifically inside the Kill Arkham Asylum prequel comics. Inside Arkham, Zsasz taunted King Shark during processing, calling him a scared little fishy, and warning him that new inmates don't last long. When King Shark doesn't get the hint, Zsasz explains that he plans to stick him, literally, which only confuses the shark further. The conversation ends the only way it could. King Shark snaps and bites Zsasz's head clean off, and ends the career of Gotham's most self-righteous psychopath. After years of carving bodies and marks into his own flesh, Victor Zsasz finally became what he always believed he was, a tally on someone else's record. And with that, let's move on to number 3.
The role of a lifetime!
Basil Carlo was once just another struggling actor trying to make Gotham remember his name, and on Christmas Eve, during the events of Arkham Origins, Basil actually performed in an impressionist show at the Monarch Theatre. But by the time he turned up again, Carlo wasn't a man anymore, he was Clayface. Dr. Penelope Young documented his condition when he was locked up in Arkham's penitentiary, calling him unstable, unpredictable, and disturbingly intelligent. Batman first encounters him in the games while searching for Warden Quincy Sharp. Clayface composes Aaron Cash, then as the Warden himself, then Commissioner Gordon, all trying to toy with Batman. His cell was plastered in white handprints, dolling up the glass like a weird piece of art. A warning sign nearby even read "Inmate may be impersonating other personnel," which I'm sure is a sign they've never had to print out before. Anyway, once Joker's siege on Arkham began, Clayface was set to be released by Harley Quinn as part of Joker's master plan. But she got distracted because, of course she did, she's Harley Quinn, and Clayface stayed locked up. After Arkham Asylum shut, the GCPD combed through the asylum and made a fatal mistake. One guard, thinking Quincy Sharp was trapped in Clayface's cell, opened the door, clearly ignoring the very specific sign they had next to the cell. Believe it or not, it wasn't actually Sharp, it was Basil Carlo, finally free, and by the time the real Sharp was found, Clayface was long gone. In Arkham City, he slipped in undetected, changing forms to find his way past security, and met his new employer, the Joker. The Clown Prince was dying and needed someone who could play his part a little too well. Clayface became the ultimate understudy. He mimicked Joker's healthy form, ran operations under his name, and helped the Clown Prince orchestrate the old fake Joker gag. During the game's final act, with Joker kidnapping Talia, much to Batman's dismay, Talia slipped Joker's grip and stabbed Mr. J, killing him. But the man Talia stabbed wasn't Joker at all, it was in fact Clayface. The real Joker emerged, dying and delirious, and Batman fought Clayface in the Monarch Theatre, luring him into the explosives and slicing through his body with Talia's sword. In the end, Batman froze him solid in the Lazarus chamber below the theatre, and then Clayface's remains tumbled into the Lazarus pit below, exploding. The cure was saved, Joker was doomed, and Basil Carlo was beaten. But that wasn't the end for the future face of the DCU. When the GCPD shut down Arkham City, they collected samples of Clayface's dried mud. Those fragments, still alive and still infected with Lazarus energy, were studied by Simon Stagg for Project Meta, and even stolen by Hush for his facial reconstruction. Then came Suicide Squad Kill Arkham Asylum. Years after Joker's death, Carlo had somehow pulled himself back together, weak but breathing, and now locked in an Argus-controlled Arkham Asylum, he shared a cell block with King Shark, and fittingly, he couldn't resist some theatrics. He mimicked Amanda Waller's voice to warn Shark that he was just another pawn in her game, and during the chaotic breakout orchestrated by Amanda Waller, Clayface joined forces with King Shark, Killer Croc, and Man-Bat in a brutal rampage through Arkham's halls, tearing apart guards and freeing Solomon Grundy along the way. The group turned on each other in a blood-soaked brawl until King Shark fled. When the dust settled, Clayface tried one final act, posing as Amanda Waller herself. The real Waller arrived and both shouted accusations of who was who at each other, and it ended the only way it really could. King Shark recognised the real one by scent and bit Clayface's head clean off, a theme which is becoming all too noticeable in this video. Clayface's story is a short one, and one which I really can't say I've ever known the full extent of, but with that said, let's move on to story number 4.
Get me. I didn't. What have I done?
Kirk Langstrom, a man of science and good intentions, met his future wife Francine in graduate school, and the two bonded over a shared obsession with curing human diseases through genetic splicing. It wasn't glamorous work, and most of Gotham's scientific community thought they were lunatics, but when Kirk began losing his hearing, that obsession turned into something more, and it wasn't just about saving lives anymore, it was about saving his own. He used his condition as an opportunity to test their theories, splicing bat DNA into human genetics in the hopes of restoring his hearing. The experiment worked, I guess, but not in the way he intended. The cure twisted his body into something grotesque, a hulking winged creature that didn't resemble the man he once was in the slightest. His mind fractured under the transformation, and the thing that crawled out of that lab wasn't Kirk Langstrom anymore, it was Man-Bat. In his madness, he destroyed the lab and seemingly killed Francine in the chaos before vanishing into Gotham. Man-Bat would drift through the skies, haunting Miagani Island and you. And when Batman finally encountered him, he managed to take a blood sample and trace the tragedy back to Kirk's lab, piecing together the story of a man who tried to play God and lost everything. Batman eventually confronted Man-Bat again, getting him with the cure that didn't take the first time. It actually took a second dose and a mid-air takedown before Kirk finally reverted to his human form. When Batman brought him into the GCPD, Langstrom broke down in tears upon learning that Francine was gone. The guilt had crushed him more than the serum ever could. But if Batman later revisits the lab, Francine's body is missing, and the words "Forever My Love" are written across a shattered screen, leaving us guessing whether Man-Bat or Kirk had gotten Francine's body, and where or what was happening to her. On Halloween, in the real world, Langstrom's story takes one final turn. If the player has Man-Bat in custody, Batman can be jump scared by Kirk again, and this time if he checks in at the GCPD, an officer confirms that Langstrom had escaped again and transformed again, and we can see his cell broken. Years later, again during Suicide Squad Kill Arkham Asylum, Man-Bat resurfaced during the giant escape orchestrated by Amanda Waller. Man-Bat burst free, shredding a guard's arm clean off before dropping in mid-air like discarded prey. Security cameras caught him prowling the halls as inmates tore through the facility, and at one point he actually saved Deadshot, forcing Deadshot to mutter that he never thought that he'd actually be saved by a bat. Later, Harley Quinn and Scarecrow passed through the corridors to retrieve their gear, only to find Man-Bat hunched over a dead guard feeding. By the time of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League though, the serum that started it all had become a relic, sealed away in the Hall of Justice as part of the quote-unquote Batman experience, complete with a cheap cardboard cutout of Man-Bat jumping out for laughs. Harley Quinn even joked about wondering whatever happened to him. Kirk's story is one of the most gut-wrenching in the series, and I'd be really interested to find out what happens to him in future games, which hopefully render Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League officially non-canon. But hey, if they don't, in such a short time, Man-Bat already becomes one of the better written villains in the series, as we move on to our fifth and final villain.
Would you believe good old-fashioned revenge? To be honest, I don't care if you do.
Thomas Elliot and Bruce Wayne were childhood friends, though calling them friends might be generous in hindsight. Thomas was named after Bruce's father, the great surgeon Thomas Wayne, a man he truly idolised. But where Bruce admired his parents for their compassion, Thomas admired the power that came from their control. Even as a child, Elliot had something dark in him. When he was young, he actually tried to kill his parents so he could inherit their fortune early, and his father died in a car crash orchestrated by him. But his mother survived thanks to the surgical skills of Thomas Wayne. That single act sealed Elliot's hatred forever, and he blamed the Wayne family for ruining his perfect plan. When Bruce's parents were murdered, Thomas saw it as cosmic unfairness. Bruce got the fortune that he had been denied, and the sympathy of the world. He even visited Bruce after the funeral, pretending to console him, and during their talk, Elliot apparently joked that he wished his parents were dead so he could be a billionaire too, and Bruce kind of just looked at him, not realising the line wasn't a joke at all. And years passed, Bruce trained to become Gotham's protector, and Thomas trained to become a surgeon, graduating from Harvard and making a name for himself. Tommy Elliot doesn't directly appear in Arkham Origins, but he is mentioned by Alfred, who notes that Tommy called to celebrate completing a difficult surgery, separating conjoined twins. It's a small nod, but it sets up that he's already successful and already connected to Bruce's world. He keeps up the facade of a respected doctor while working on the darker side of Gotham's medical scene. When Arkham Asylum reopened, he worked there for a time, and it was during this period that he'd cross paths with Joker's men, and would eventually go on, before the events of Arkham City, to perform a surgery separating Joker's twin enforcers, Hammer and Sickle. Joker funded the operation, and Elliot pocketed the money for his own secret projects. But Elliot doesn't actually appear in Arkham Asylum. His name does show up on a surgery schedule in the medical facility, and Batman notices it while rescuing Dr. Chen, and it eventually becomes one of Riddler's riddles. Batman later admits he was disturbed to see Elliot's name in the asylum. In the following months though, more bodies started turning up across Gotham with suspicious surgical work. The technique pointed to Elliot, and around the time Arkham City opened, Hush put his plan into motion. He began targeting men with facial features similar to Bruce Wayne. He kidnapped them, surgically removed their faces, and froze the pieces he needed. Then the press dubbed him the Identity Thief. Working inside Arkham City's medical centre, Hush kept to himself and slowly built his masterpiece, a new face, Bruce Wayne's face. When Batman investigates the killings though, he uncovers the truth. The killer wasn't some random psychopath or even himself, it was Thomas Elliot, and by the time Batman finds him, Hush has already finished the surgery. He's standing there with Bruce's face stitched over his own, scars still raw and bloody. He's even modified his fingerprints and voice to replicate Bruce's. Hush traps Batman in his hideout and begins mocking him, and then escapes Arkham City. Batman informs Oracle and promises to track him down later. And after Arkham City, Hush joined forces with the Arkham Knight. In a safe house, Hush's scars are healed using a sample of Clayface's mud, and he's told to keep his face hidden until the plan is ready. When Scarecrow's attack plunges Gotham into chaos, Hush finally makes his move. He infiltrated Wayne Tower and pretended to be Bruce Wayne himself, and then he takes Lucius Fox hostage. Using Fox's retinal scan, he tries to access Wayne Enterprises' funds and steal everything Bruce ever built. But Batman intervenes and Elliot demands to see Bruce, not realising he's actually already standing in front of him. Batman removes the mask and reveals his true identity and calls Elliot's bluff. In a rage, Hush admits he caused his parents' crash all those years ago and that he's hated Bruce ever since. Batman dares him to pull the trigger and Hush hesitates, with Batman disarming him in a single move. Lucius smashes a bottle over his head and the Dark Knight drives him through a desk, Batista style. Unable to send Elliot to the GCPD without exposing himself, although this wouldn't actually matter if you complete the side mission after the main story, Bruce orders Lucius to lock him in the vault beneath the tower, and once the night is over, Bruce promises Hush will face real justice. And that's actually where his story ends in the Arkhamverse. No weird Kill Arkham Asylum ending for him. Well, at least for now, we can never trust Rocksteady after that. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. I do hope you enjoyed this longer but simultaneously more condensed style of lore video. These characters are all super interesting in their own right, but wouldn't be good enough for a video on their own, so I thought I'd bundle them together because at some point they kind of all connect, or they at least have a horror element to them. And yeah, these characters are all really disturbing in one way or another. Let me know what you think about this type of video down below, because I'm more than open to doing it again. I hope you enjoyed it, I'll see you next time, and goodbye.